Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode, and I'm so excited. We have Shawn Mynar here. And Shawn, tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I am a nutritionist, holistic nutritionist, and I specialize in the ketogenic diet, mainly for women, because kind of through my own health journey, did all of it myself and realized that there were some pretty significant differences between a ketogenic diet for a man and a ketogenic diet for a woman. And so now I'm teaching women how to get into a ketogenic state safely and effectively, kind of making sure we take all of that into consideration, kind of the female hormones and stress component and all that stuff. And I've been doing that for several years now, and the keto community is growing rapidly, and so I'm able to help
Just like keto.
Yeah, it definitely has been kind of the whirlwind pickup pace right now, so it's exciting.
So tell me a little bit about how you cured your gastro issues and how you weaned yourself off of a ton of medication by changing your diet. And what did you do?
Yeah, so back in 2008, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is autoimmune disease of the colon, for anybody that doesn't know. And basically, kind of to sum that up, to make it really simple, it's your body kind of attacking your immune system, I guess, attacking a specific organ, which for me was my colon. And that for a couple of years, I was fine just doing what the doctor told me and took 9 pills a day, every single day, got a little bit better, but not really much better. And then after.
So what were your symptoms and how did you even know that you had it?
Yeah, so that is a good question, because it's a pretty specific set of symptoms, and hopefully there's no like TMI on this podcast, because I'm about to get TMI for somebody.
No, I talk about how I can't poop all the time, so it's fine.
Okay. So it's the opposite. In atypical cases of ulcerative colitis, it's frequent trips to the bathroom, and I would say like 10 to 20 a day, like and there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of cramping, there's often blood associated, because your colon's very, very inflamed. And so that was the case. A lot of times there's mucus too. So you go to, if that ever happens, which hopefully it doesn't for anybody here, but if that ever happens, you go then to your gastroenterologist and get a colonoscopy, and that's how you are diagnosed.
Gotcha. And so that you did go get a colonoscopy.
Yeah.
And
yep, several. And that's kind of how it all came about. And then they basically, in my case, it was kind of anti-inflammatory medications that were kind of shoved in my face, which it worked to a degree, but definitely was putting a Band-Aid on the situation. Eventually got to a point where it wasn't really working anymore. And I just didn't feel comfortable knowing that my only choice was to take this medication. I knew there had to be something more. And so kind of doing my own research on Dr. Google, I realized and found a lot of cases where ulcerative colitis and really other autoimmune diseases were reversed by a change in the diet. And
So tell us a little bit about the projects you have, such as the Fat Burning Female Project, the Happy Hormones Project, and the Good Gut Projects. Like what?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So my flagship course is the Fat Burning Female Project. That's, like I said, I teach women how to get into ketosis, get into a ketogenic state. So that's something I run every other month. There's a group of women. We do it all together. It's an online class. So people join from all over, and we take kind of a process to get into ketosis. So we lower our carbohydrates, increase our fat intake, which then promotes a ketogenic diet and a ketogenic state. Then we kind of work on intuitive eating and kind of getting in touch with our bodies and stress reduction and all that stuff in that class too. So that's my main class. And then from there are kind of branches where a lot of times when you go through something like this and you are trying to become keto, what happens, especially for women, is that shows you that there's something else going on with your health. So that's why I created these alternate courses too, where, you go through the class and you realize, my hormones are a mess. I have major hormonal imbalance, which often keto will show up. will make that very evident in women. And so then you can do happy hormones, where I actually do functional lab testing on women's hormones using a salivary hormone test, and provide a protocol. And we go through the process over 5 weeks of kind of working to, I guess, learn how to balance hormones. Like, balancing hormones takes a really long time for women, just so everybody knows. But at least we get into that process. And then the same thing goes for the good gut. A lot of times people realize they have a gut health issue or a food sensitivity issue when they do go into ketosis.
Yeah, that's great. All right, well, we got to get right into our questions. So I'm going to put them on my screen just to make it easier. This is from Ashley in Park City. I've been eating keto for the past year or so, and I've noticed that in my keto communities, intermittent fasting is becoming more and more popular. It seems like the two lifestyles work really well together. Why is this? And I've seen that too, so that's a great question, because I've seen that over and over, that people who are big into keto is really big into intermittent fasting.
They really, and it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing if you are ready to fast and your body does well with fasting. But like someone like me, you go into the keto community and you see all these people fasting. So you think you also need to. And so you do it before, I see this quite a bit with my ladies, that they're not ready to fast. Their hormones are still out of whack. Their thyroid's a mess. Their adrenals are crazy, and they fast too soon, causing more harm than good to their health and their overall balance. So that's kind of where I see it, like kind of wish it wasn't so far into the keto community. But the reason why it is so is because I really believe that if you are going to fast, you should be producing ketones. You should get into ketosis first, because then if you don't, and you just start fasting and you go from eating even healthy carbs like rice, sweet potatoes, oatmeal, that kind of thing, to fasting, your body's used to using glucose as fuel. Like, all those carbohydrates are fueling your body. It doesn't yet know, and will kind of come as a shock when all of a sudden that food's gone, just totally gone. What the body is used to using as fuel is no longer being supplied.
Well, the reason why they both go hand in hand is because either way you go, your body, instead of using glucose for fuel, it's using fat for fuel.
Right. It's producing ketones that then are the signaler to use fat as fuel. But if you can get into that state of ketosis first, where your body already knows to use ketones as fuel, it makes the fasting much easier and much safer and much less stressful on your body. That's basically the short way of what I was trying to say in a really long-winded way.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, Angela in Lexington says, I've been looking into the keto, and I think it's crazy how much fat people eat, like mayo, sour cream, bacon. I'm not comfortable eating this much fat. Do I have to eat a ton of fat to be considered keto, or could I just stick low carb and eat moderate fats?
Oh, I love this question. I actually answered this question on my podcast, the Keto for Women show, so she can go over and listen to that. But short answer, yeah, you have to eat that much fat because you have to think of this. The ketone production happens, basically that level of fat is the signaler for your body to use ketones, to start producing those ketones. You need those fatty acids to build ketones. That's kind of the building block to create ketones in your body. So you need those fatty acids. That's kind of this like switch that happens. It's like, okay, I have all the fatty acids I need to start producing ketones. That's what's going to happen. So initially, when you are trying to get into ketosis, it's high fat. It's very high fat. But what a lot of people don't realize is that once you are safely in ketosis and your body's keto adapted, you don't really need that much fat. You can kind of go back to, you're still going to be on a high fat diet, but a little bit more normal levels of fat. So that's the first thing I wanted to say is like, yeah, bump yourself up and test your ketones to make sure that you're in ketosis and find that level of fat that you need to get there. But then give yourself a little bit of time there, maybe a couple weeks to where you're fully keto adapted. And then you can start dropping your fat intake down. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say that isn't really the question, but I really want to point out is that I think it's starting to go away, thank goodness, but there's a huge misconception that people that eat keto eat bacon and mayo and cheese and cream all the time. I eat bacon. That's pretty much it. I don't eat any of those. So Although that's not true. I do eat my homemade mayo, which is eggs and avocado oil. It's very healthy mayo.
Which, by the way, I just started because I took one of those tests and it said I was highly allergic to eggs. And so I stopped eating eggs. And so I found some mayonnaise that is made with avocado oil. It's called avocado oil mayonnaise,
which we all should be eating, because the other oils, and that's a really important part, is yes, you're going high fat, but it's with good, healthy oils. It's not with canola oil or these vegetable oils or any just like, low quality dairy. Like, you really have to take the quality of the fats that you're increasing with into consideration. So that's why I make my own mayo. I don't do dairy, but if I ever did, it would be pasture raised dairy, cheese, cream, whatever. My bacon is the highest quality you can get. Same with all the meats that I'm getting and any animal fats that I'm using. So that's what's important. We aren't eating this crappy fat that's going to cause problems. But if you really focus on getting good, high quality oils, it makes all the difference.
Well, good. All right. Next question comes from Pamela in Chesterfield. Everywhere I turn, I see the keto diet popping up out of nowhere. I always look into different diets, and I'm wondering, what is the difference in the keto diet, the South Beach diet, or the Atkins diet? Is this just a new name for an old diet?
Yeah, good question. In a way, yes, but a lot of reasons, no. So those diets really focused on a higher level of protein, whereas we are focusing on moderating our protein. So just like a normal daily amount of protein and increasing the fat intake so that you actually produce ketones. Another thing, if you'll kind of think back to the Atkins days, you saw the Atkins bars and shakes and all that stuff. It was not promoting a real food, like,
eating whole foods from the ground.
Yeah, it's a very simple concept that at that time wasn't a thing. It was like, we didn't even pay attention. It was more about the processed foods and the convenience foods. And keto is really trying to go away from that. So I think those are the two main differences, is that we're focusing on getting good, high quality fats in the ketogenic community. And we're focusing on eating real food now in the keto community, instead of just like all these sugar alcohols and weird chemical stuff.
That's so good.
Low carb, but not good for you.
Good. Hey guys, I'm so excited that my new book, Waste Away, The Chantel Ray Way, is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and pretty much anywhere you can find books. But we also have the audiobook, the ebook, and my new recipe book that you can download all the recipes that I love that I make, and it's super cheap. It's all my favorites. Anyway, if you have a minute to write a review on Amazon, I would be ever grateful. Jennifer in Raleigh says, I started keto about 6 months ago, and one of my favorite side effects has been regular periods, which I've never had in my life since I struggle with PCOS. Can you explain how the keto diet has such a positive effect on female hormones?
So many reasons. This is like my bread and butter right here, because there's a lot of women dealing with hormonal imbalances, whether we know it or not, which is crazy. But I've seen so many cases where keto has just completely normalized and regulated women's hormones after years of them not being able to. Whether they're currently having a cycle or they're in menopause or postmenopausal, I see it in any case, in any age. And the main reason, I believe, is that when you are in a state of ketosis, it's your body's preferred source of fuel, even though it's not typical anymore because of the carbohydrates sources that we have available to us now. But it is your body's preferred source of fuel. I like to call it like body homeostasis. Like, your body's just happy there. It's balanced, it's happy, it's like, cool, I know I have plenty of energy coming in at all times because I have this body fat that I can use for fuel. And you're producing anti-inflammatory benefits, immune system benefits, energy benefits, like new mitochondria are growing, you're increasing your mitochondrial function. So your body's happy there. And so when we have a hormonal imbalance, many times it's because of stress kind of situation. In the case of PCOS, is a blood sugar situation. So we're in this state of body homeostasis, which is super stress-free for your body. So you can start kind of reducing the amount of stress that you're putting on yourself, which we all as women, even obviously men too, have a ton of stress nowadays. And then secondly, in the case of PCOS, your PCOS is a blood sugar condition. And so what you want to do if you have PCOS, which is why it's actually a very studied case to get into a ketogenic state if you do have PCOS, is because you can really regulate your blood sugar. You're not eating carbohydrates. You're not eating anything that's going to increase your blood sugar. So you don't have this roller coaster effect that most of us do if we aren't keto. When you're keto, I call it the baby roller coaster. Like, this is your blood sugar. It's kind of like a normal, staying in that normal range all day, no matter if you eat or not eat or whatever, you're really balanced as far as your blood sugar. And then that gets your PCOS under control. And then we have periods again. So yeah, there's just a lot of facets. I mean, that question itself, I could go on, but those are the two biggest things. You're reducing your stress. For those that don't have PCOS and still have hormonal imbalances, it's a component of stress as to why you have those issues in the first place. And you're regulating your blood sugar.
All right, Karen in Fort Bragg says, I've been into intermittent fasting for about 3 months and have been reading about ketosis. I've always thought I could only get into ketosis through a low-carb diet, but now I'm reading that I can get into ketosis from fasting alone. Is this true? And if so, can I test it using the keto urine strips? How accurate are those?
Good questions. Yes, so you can get into ketosis through fasting. It's going to be kind of a different process. And for women, I would recommend not doing that. I would recommend kind of what we talked about earlier, which is to go through the process of getting into ketosis using food and changing your diet a little bit. It's a much safer approach to producing ketones, because when you produce ketones when you're fasting, it's basically because your body's like desperate. It's like this, like, oh my God, what is happening? I have no energy. I guess I'm producing ketones. It's very harsh. It's very hard on the body for a woman, especially. So if you can do that first and then kind of fast as it naturally comes, which that's a great benefit about being in a ketogenic diet, is like you often just aren't hungry. So you can go several hours before before you want breakfast, and you're technically intermittent fasting. So
basically if you're gonna, if you are gonna combine the two, you're saying start with getting your body into ketosis and start doing a lower carb diet. It'll make the intermittent fasting a lot easier because you're not riding that crazy roller coaster.
Yeah. And it's not kind of your body producing ketones out of desperation. It's a very tough spot. You're like, man, I'm basically, my body's starved. This body is starving. Mm-hmm. I'm going to produce ketones in order to keep it into survival mode. It's not that when you are providing the fuel that you need, you're just changing your macronutrients to produce those ketones. So kind of be that signaler to produce those ketones. So
what is your opinion about those keto urine strips?
Yeah, I don't like them and I don't recommend them. I know they're cheap, but just like save the $20 or whatever they are and use that to go towards a blood ketone meter. I think that's your best bet.
And I have a video. I need to, if you go to chantelrayway.com/ketometer, I have a video of me doing it because I bought one. Yeah. But I did it not through I just did it from doing fasting. So it was from fasting for an extended period of time. And it was funny because I had a doctor on the show and we did it. He actually came to my house. And the cool thing is, was that he had just had a fruit smoothie and I tested his blood ketones and they were still really good. Just because he does a lot of intermittent fasting and for the most part eats a really high fat, diet with very little carbs.
Yeah. I mean, I've been keto now for 2 years consistently, and I can eat carbs and stay in ketosis pretty easily. So if I want them, and that kind of happens as you become more keto adapted for sure. And including the fasting helps, of course. But I mean, a lot of people get into ketosis just overnight when they're they haven't eaten for 12 hours. It could be that easy, but I just prefer it. And I see it work a lot better if you take that route of getting into ketosis first. And then what's cool about that is then when you are eating, so during your feasting times, if you're a faster, during those times when you're eating, you stay in a ketogenic diet as well. So you keep those meals keto when you are eating.
So have you done the keto where you've tried to do the urine strips and tried to do the blood meter at the same time?
I never have, because I don't want to waste my money on some keto urine strips, because what the thing is, that is testing acetone, which eventually you will no longer secrete it as you get into, you no longer expel it as you get into further into ketosis. So they become inaccurate very quickly. And it's just, within a couple weeks, you're not going to get a good reading. It's actually going to give a false negative, which you don't want that. You want to know that you're actually in ketosis. So just go with the blood meter. I mean, the cool thing is, because there's a lot more competition now, the blood meters are pretty inexpensive now too, as are the test strips. Back when I started 2 years ago, they were like $4 a strip, and now they're down to like $1 a strip. So it's worth it, I think, to get that. And you don't have to test every single day or multiple times a
And
day.
how often would you say you're testing?
I don't test anymore, because I just know. I've done it long enough that I know what it feels like when I'm in ketosis, and I know what it feels like when I'm not. Mm-hmm. And I don't like that feeling. So I try to stay in ketosis as much as possible. But there have been occasions, but I recommend at the beginning, when you are getting into ketosis, testing, I'd say like 3 times a week, maybe like every other day, something like that, until you start producing ketones and you start feeling what it feels like, the differences that you're finding. And then you can go down to maybe once a week or so, just to make sure you're still doing everything for your body, like what your body wants and needs to stay in ketosis. Yeah.
All right. Tony in Oakland says, I combine intermittent fasting with a low carb lifestyle and have never felt better when I do. I've never felt better than I do when I'm in ketosis. What are some of the best vitamins and supplements you recommend to support ketosis?
Yes. So first of all, I will always recommend eating real food, because you're going to get most of the vitamins and minerals you need, those micronutrients, through eating, good high quality vegetables, good high quality meats. That's going to take care of it. So you don't really need a multivitamin from there.
That is such a good point, because honestly, what's funny is, for me, I got a little out of control with supplements, because what would happen is I spend so much of my time doing so much research on this supplement, that supplement, blah, 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 blah. And I really got to the point where I feel like I was hurting my liver, because I was taking just all the, you hear on a podcast and they'd be like, oh, this supplement's good, this supplement's good. Now I still do take a smoothie that you'll have to go to that. Go to chantelrayway.com/anti-cancer smoothie. And this smoothie has been like a miracle changer for me, because I've been feeling so good. And for you, I have a low sugar one that's basically has like 2 grams of sugar or something like that from acai, and it's delicious. Cool. So it's really, really good.
You have to check that out. So definitely always start with food. Instead of a multivitamin, what I recommend is either eating organ meat, like, grass-fed beef livers, great place to start. Although I personally can't stand it.
I was like, no.
But you also get that in supplement form. You can get beef liver supplements, and I think that would take the place of a multivitamin by far. I would recommend that instead of just getting like some generic multivitamin that you're just going to pee out anyway and not actually absorb. So I recommend that. The one thing I think every single person who is in ketosis needs is a electrolyte supplement. And a good high quality one. A lot of times, the powders and things like that, they seem great, but then they're actually really low in electrolytes. So we really want to make sure that we're getting a good.
And why is that?
Because when you're in ketosis and you're eating low carb, basically you're no longer storing as much glucose. So we're used to having all this stored glucose in our muscle fibers and our liver and all that stuff, and you're not really doing that anymore. So every time glucose is stored as glycogen, it is stored with water. and with, water molecules. As you release that, you release a lot of water. So that's why a lot of people, when they first start a low carb diet, they start by losing a ton of weight and then it stalls. But that weight was water weight because you're no longer storing it. And with that, of course, when you lose water, you also lose electrolytes. So just since we're storing less water, we're storing less electrolytes, easier to lose them. So that's why just replacing those and keeping those levels in check makes a huge difference, especially if you're dealing with cramps or sleep issues, even just energy stuff, water retention, anything like that. If you start taking electrolyte support, you will see a big difference in that. So I really like the Trace Minerals brand of electrolytes. So I recommend that. And then a lot of people, if you're eating a higher fat diet, especially if, I think we all did probably, at some point you were eating low fat, which was at one point what we all did, right? Because we thought fat was bad. But now that we realize it's not, if you start increasing your dietary fat intake, a lot of times your liver isn't quite ready to support that and break that down. So getting a little bit of liver gallbladder support for a short period of time while you are kind of increasing your fat intake often helps you actually digest that fat better. And you'll see quite a difference in if you are having any issues with your bowel movements when you transition into a more ketogenic type diet, you'll see a big change in those and just how you feel after eating. Like if you ever feel bloated or anything, especially after a high fat meal, that will disappear when you start supporting your liver and gallbladder. So that's kind of a short-term thing just while your body kind of learns what to do now with this extra fat that's coming in. So I would say that. And then the only other thing is obviously drink a lot of good filtered water. And in some of that water, add some really good quality pink Himalayan, gray Celtic, something like that type of salt. And that, again, will help with that electrolyte water balance that we have going on in our bodies, especially with some really good sodium, good high quality sodium, and you'll feel a lot better, a lot more even, a lot more energy, that kind of stuff, because you're just losing a lot of water.
Right. That's good advice.
Well, it was a pleasure having you on our show today. Thank you so much. And we have your website in the show notes. And so if you're interested in learning more about Shawn, go to her website. Just tell everyone your website. Spell it out real quick for them.
Yeah, it's ShawnMynar.com. So that's ShawnMynar.com.
Well, it was a pleasure having you on this show, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much. It was really fun.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.